One. Hello, we should be live on YouTube for this. Welcome to this very special TP live stream all the way from Boston. We have Mr. Shahjehan Khan, who's a musician, who's a voiceover actor, who's an actor. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right, Shehzad. We were just checking in before we started. Going into the end of this year. Yeah, doing all right.
The end of the world, potentially.
The end
I
of
mean,
the
at
world.
least that's what COVID feels like at this point.
Pata
Omicron, Megatron. बस हो
nahi
गई है मेरी
kya.
तो.
I don't know, bahut ho gaya. Obviously, man, I hope that things go okay, but abhi koi acha irada nahi lag raha. So.
Do you have any, do you pay any credence to the conspiracy theories? Because America में तो
यार क्रीडेंस तो
माशाल्लाह.
तो पे करनी पड़ती है मतलब आई एम मैरिड टू अ साइंटिस्ट so I'll just go ahead and say that
So,
outright so it's all
so she's part of the Illuminati conspiracy.
naturally
अच्छा,
naturally
checks
you know
आते हैं.
obviously हाँ checks आते हैं जो भी yeah she's part of the exactly so I've got the inside scoop but yeah I don't know dude it's like I'm sure I don't have to tell you this but I think now it's just a matter of we just don't live in the same reality anymore. It's not, there's no, it's not like one place where we can go. Where it's just the same information, and I don't know. I don't know how to deal
So
with it.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm quite a pro-vaxxer. I
अच्छा
was one of, I was
मैं
in the
अभी समझा
first.
मैं अभी बताने लगा था कि मैं अभी बूस्टर
But
लगाने जा रहा हूँ इंशाल्लाह so
but there's a but coming. So I was, I think, in the first 50,000 people vaccinated in
अच्छा
Pakistan. But
yeah where it's just the same information.
oh, I think I can hear YouTube in the back. Sorry. Um, so I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all, but
Yeah.
I am also quite skeptical of big pharma, especially in the USA.
हाँ ये तो I mean it's I understand. I feel like I don't want to be somebody that's like I understand like I don't want to be one of these like both sides kind of people about it in some ways again because of the
I mean, the good people on both sides, Shahjahan.
right yeah but yeah man no I don't know it's yeah I don't
I don't
I
know
don't
if
know
you're following this, but Trevor Noah got cancelled because he made a joke about the CEO of Moderna. I mean,
अच्छा
it's quite a weird world we live in where the CEO
yeah
of Moderna is pushing booster shots. I mean,
हाँ
a
yeah
vaccine that was developed by public funds,
yeah
जिसके प्रॉफिट सारे बिग फार्मा को जा रहे हैं,
हाँ
उसको क्वेश्चन करने पे तो ट्रेवर नोवा को कैंसिल नहीं होना चाहिए.
nee, I yeah, I definitely I hear you there. I think if matlab in all seriousness, like it's been quite awful, this whole thing. So I think that's like yeah, I was telling you I had it in earlier this year, and I don't know. I'm assuming that you've been healthy and stuff. But it was rough, and also just in terms of some of the work I was doing at the time, seeing the way that it was disproportionately affecting certain communities and stuff. So, for sure, yeah.
हम ये बहुत tangent पे चले गए. There are
हाँ
a
तो
lot of things that
मतलब यही तो जानना पड़ेगा तो क्या करें
there are a
this
lot
is
of
the
things
state
I
of
there are a lot of
yeah.
things I want to talk to you about. I think
हाँ
specifically Kominas की मैंने बातें करनी थी क्योंकि
हाँ
तकवा
जरूर
कोड
करें
ने sort of I think I was at Lums when it came out. This is what 2011ish.
Kaminas का I think पाकिस्तान में probably 2009 or probably 2008 or 2009. मैं लाहौर में था in 2008. That's where we were. My bandmate Basim and I were living in a flat near the Neher. So that's kind of that's probably the time that I remember. So
Yeah, but there was
I'm
this
curious to
ship.
know what you heard about it, and I've also dealt with this extensively, kind of in my show. The whole everything that came with that, and yeah,
So that's a very good jumping off point because I think as a young man myself in universities, those ideas about what your religious identity is, growing up in Pakistan, you grow up Muslim, but what does it even mean to be Muslim? I don't think anybody ever explores that unless they're specifically given that opportunity. So when you're
right.
at university, you're out of your home and you're questioning certain things. So that Takwa Ko documentary clip went pretty viral where the four of you are haranguing
Ha, the bitch,
Imam.
the one. The
So
music
at
is
one
haram
point
thing.
at one point the mom's like, वो नमाज हो रही है मैं नमाज पढ़ने जा रहा
Ha!
हूँ. Like, this discussion's more important than the namaz, and the guy was like, I'm
Oi, oi,
done.
oi.
I'm
Yeah.
done.
No, it's funny, and it's funny because yeah, the identity thing too, and then from the perspective of the our never ending first gen like ABCD crisis thing that we've all got going all the time. So I'm interested in talking to you about that stuff too.
So yeah, let's just jump into straight into these notions of identity, since you're also now talking about in your own podcast, King of the World, Shahjahan, being Muslim post
End of
nine
the world,
11.
king of the world, everything at the same time. Yeah.
End of the fucking world. तो ये जो notion of Muslim, do you feel like, I feel like, at least from my perspective, being in the US very briefly, कि after
अच्छा.
9/11 शायद आप खुद भी नहीं अगर सोच रहे हो आप मुसलमान हैं, but because everybody thrusted the identity upon you as a Muslim living in America, you had to grapple with it even if you didn't want to or had not before that.
Yay, this is exactly my kind of thesis in over the 7-part series, where it became honestly, when I was first approached to do this show, I didn't want to do it. I didn't ever want to talk about 9/11 again. I didn't want to center it in that way. But we kind of realized that there was a different way to tell the story as like kind of a coming of age thing. Because so I was 17, about to turn 18 when 9/11 happened. Tika, I was a senior in high school. And just like you said, it automatically kind of, when, like you said, kind of like, you're at that time, being a 17-year-old, things are kind of hard, for many other reasons too. But you're figuring out your place in the world, how you relate to all these different pieces of who you are, and then this thing happens, and it becomes the most important part of who you appear to be, I think, to other people overnight. So that,
I'm sure you don't follow Pakistani politics that
I try
closely.
my best. I've been listening to your show, tuning in for the last few months. A friend of mine, she's a Pakistani playwright who's studying here at BU. So she was the one that turned me on to your show.
Oh,
Her name is Fatma.
I know
I
Fatma.
yeah, yeah.
I was like, Pakistani playwright in Boston कितने ही होंगे, Fatma ही होगी.
हाँ, उसने कहा था कि यार,
हाँ.
you should check out. I told her about my show, and then she really liked it, and then she's like, you should try to. So that's the reason. Fatma's the reason that I messaged you slyly
It's
on
also
Twitter.
interesting that you're doing a Rajiv Joseph play right now. I
वो
was
actually
the dramaturg.
पिछले साल किया था. Yeah.
I was the dramaturg for one of the productions of the Bengal Tiger.
अच्छा.
हाँ, and I was in Brooklyn
Wow.
doing theater. तो
अच्छा
ये भी
अच्छा.
हमारी कहीं ना कहीं
अच्छा,
ताल्लुक.
ये काफी intersections चल रही हैं फिर. Very
So
very cool.
the reason I brought up Pakistani politics was
हाँ.
कि I would love your take on this. हम decolonization के नाम पर what we're doing is we're taking what the colonial lens of Pakistan is. जिस तरह for instance खान साहब ने आज ही OIC में या कल ही बोला है कि जी पश्तून तो हैं एक backward culture who don't like sending their girls to school. So we need to be sensitive. I mean, I know I'm exaggerating. Those weren't his
हाँ.
exact words. But in general, we take the colonial idea of what it is to be us, what it is to be Muslim, what it is to be brown, what it is to be South Asian. And we
Yeah.
regurgitate that somehow as if it's our own.
Yeah. But that during the filming of that Wakur documentary, there was, the second half of it was shot in Pakistan, and there's our friend Mike who it's kind of follows his story, I guess, in conjunction with ours. The first thing he said about being in Pakistan, he's a white convert to Islam. He was like, "Dude, I think Pakistan's like a white supremacist country in many ways." I think he had just landed. He had maybe just seen like a billboard or something, and he had been out for a day. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think in the post-colonial lens, we're all dealing with it in different ways for sure. I mean, I think that, it looks different for us as, I think, the first-gen people. I think that for me, I feel like when you are born in the U.S. Of Pakistani heritage, you sort of you can fall in maybe a couple of different buckets. Like you can have, like I was very fortunate to grow up speaking Urdu, speaking decent amount of Punjabi as well, and having like most of my family is still in Pakistan, for example, and having like a very grounded sense that is sort of part of kind of who I am, and you know, we took a lot of trips when we were younger, so it was like a point of pride. It wasn't, you know, and I feel like you can kind of go in that direction, or you can be in that like, well, Pakistan is this just like backwards kind of a place. I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I mean, I feel like I definitely credit like my parents for a lot of that. But complicated है यार. Yeah.
थोड़ा juxtaposition आपको आपको feel हुआ, because I'm assuming in the US you were probably primarily seen as this Muslim punk band, and then you come to the homeland and we're like, ये तो blasphemous
Yay,
punk band
this is
है.
exactly episode 4 of my series कि वहाँ जाके there was a night, and I go into this in detail, where हम बैठे हुए हैं, and there was these group of guys that were like, dude, and it, you know, immediately with the media attention that was like thrust upon the Kominas was in this very Orientalist, you know, Western by basically white journalists, like sort of antidote to like, oh, look at these progressive, you know, Muslim kid. This could only exist in America. This could only exist in the West, you know, like as if, you know, people in that part of the world haven't like had progressive thoughts. You know what I mean? So it just became very obvious right away that this was not, and you know, in a way, like, yeah, all bands or whatever not satisfied with the way that they're portrayed, and you know, labels and this and that, but to us it became very obvious pretty much from the day that we landed there that, you know, and we come and we're like, hum bhi shayad matlab from a maybe like a semi arrogant place of being like, ha hum aayenge Lahore, we'll do some, you know, we'll fit in right away, you know, you know, we were able to do, I think, a couple things. We had like a cool kind of independent scene too, but in terms of the stuff that you know, we didn't really understand Pakistan or Lahori culture in the same way. We can't just show up and like start writing punk songs about stuff, and you know, without fully like integrating our, so it was in a way, and I kind of say, you know, it's like I moved back to Pakistan to like find myself, or whatever that means. And then
Love,
you get there.
eat, pray, love journey.
हाँ वही मतलब I honestly, if I'm honest about it, that's kind of where I was at. I was like in my early 20s, and you know, मतलब yes, that what is this part of me that exists there? Can I go live there, work there independently? मेरे लिए simultaneously, I had a pretty serious mental health thing going on with addiction. You know, I've been in recovery now for almost 11 years. I've been completely sober. So at that time, I'm also like wrestling with that stuff. So, you know, there's all these things are sort of happening at the same time. So.
I really want to talk about the mental health and addiction, because I think this channel really focuses on that a lot. But you hedged yourself when you said every band is sort of uncomfortable with how they're covered, but it's a lot more than that for you.
Huh.
And the way I'm able to relate is कि एक दफा एक international journalist ने मुझे बोला, we want to cover your comedy show, and I was like, great, come. So they came to Pakistan, they did the show, they did the interview, everything went great, and I was like, it'll be cool, like Pakistan mein comedy ho rahi hai type report aayegi. And then when the report came, the documentary, it was like, in a country which hangs people for blasphemy, Shehzad Ghias Shaikh tells jokes. This is him telling jokes at a venue whose owner was shot dead weeks ago. And then and I'm doing comedy while this is being reported. It's almost like if I had died after that report,
it would have been the perfect end to their segment.
It would have been a great story for them. So they're not really looking for the artist. So even people who were covering you in America probably weren't as interested in you or the band.
नहीं यार, and the music भी हमने I think we have 5 albums, you know, but people, I think, still, and we actually ended up releasing a second album with, you know, we had a couple Punjabi punk songs, one with like Munir Niazi poetry, one with Nasib Lal, like way back in the day. But you know, they weren't really interested in talking about the music. So, but in a way, we were kind of like, well, fuck, did we do this to ourselves? Man, I just swore. I hope that's okay.
Fuck that, man. We'll have to end this. Fuck, why did you do that? Fucking hell,
बस
man, you should
बहुत
have
हो गई
done that.
बहुत हो गई But
हाँ
yeah,
तो
man,
इसके
that formulaic approach to these little news packages, right? That is exactly what happened with us on the BBC, on the you name it. There was a year and a half where we were like the front page on CNN.com, and initially it's like, oh my God, like a band, you're like, oh, this band that we started in Basim's parents' basement is like, wow, people are interested. But I think simultaneously the thing that did happen was that the kids or like the community that we were kind of writing that music for we did find them too. It's just that it was kind of sometimes felt like it was lost in the noise of all this other stuff. And look, we never became like a commercially successful band. That's not really who we were and what we were after. We never like even got like a record contract. We still have a pretty DIY kind of approach to how we do stuff. But yeah, it's been 18 years. It's hard to believe. Yeah, the band started in 2004. So it's wild.
I mean, it's also a double-edged sword. Yes, it brings all that baggage with it, but
Uh-huh.
if you weren't who you are, maybe that fame wouldn't exist and you would still be playing in the maybe not still, but at least for the first couple of years, जो head start मिला in terms of the
Uh-huh.
news coverage, वो भी शायद नहीं मिलता, right?
Matlab, I know that I get asked, I think since I've done the podcast as well, like, a question like, what if 9/11 never happened? Like, what would, and I'm like, I don't
What do they
know.
expect you to answer?
I
Oh,
know.
yes, 3,000 people died, but damn, that was really good for my career.
I
Thank you
know,
for your
man. Like,
service, everybody.
oh my God, dude. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what year were you in the US? You said you spent time here briefly.
I did my master's in theater from Brooklyn College, 2013 to 15.
Acha. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I left the band to get sober between 2011 and then I rejoined in 2014. So, yeah.
So let's get into that because I think
Yeah, sure.
वो conversation ज़्यादा पाकिस्तान में तो at least नहीं होती यार at least लोग खुल के नहीं करते.
Uh-huh.
I did this phenomenal podcast with Sama Zaman on heroin addiction, and I'm
Oh,
hoping it
wow.
helped
I'd
a
love to
lot
hear
of
that.
people out. What was the moment for you? Because I know a lot of people who maybe should be in recovery, but
Yeah.
to and let's be honest, you can't convince an addict that the person's an addict till they don't
Nay,
come to that point
it's a,
themselves.
honestly, I think you can approach them with love and compassion but they ultimately have to make the choice, right? So for me, it wasn't just one moment, man. It was like a series of. So I'll say straight out, I was extremely addicted to cannabis, and that's one thing and I did a lot of other drugs too, but like I only say that, and I'm not somebody that's like I'm totally pro. This is maybe not the same conversation in Pakistan. That's a big conversation here as far as like the legalization. I'm pro the legalization of all drugs and you know smart approaches to addiction and that kind of thing. But I say that because for somebody like me who was already predisposed to depression and anxiety, or uska matlab, I don't know ke chicken or the egg type thing ke if but like as somebody that already had those sorts of tendencies, when I found chars, or cannabis or whatever, I really just latched right on. And it just became something that just became an identity, became kind of my identity like within 5-6 months. And it was all I wanted to do all the time. So it took about 10 years of, I think I knew from the age of probably, I would say even 17 that, but I'm doing it in a way that like everybody's not, and mujhe kafi usse, I'm hiding in it, but when you're young, I think it's a little bit easier to, at least for me, growing up, I lived a very sort of comfortable American suburban life, and I'm very fortunate to have like a really great family, and I didn't need, I had a lot of privileges in life. So for me, it was very easy to feel like things will sort of work themselves out, when I get older and stuff. So, yeah, so I mean, I didn't really finally get, and then the band also, so I dropped out of school a bunch of times. The band sort of became the thing that I could do regardless of the mental health stuff, like even though I would go in and out, I had all these rules, कि यार मैं चलो मैं studio में नहीं करूँगा, I won't do it live. I would eventually cross all those lines and stuff. Um, it was, yeah, so it definitely like, it was easy to also kind of go with that lifestyle in a way कि मतलब ये मैं कर रहा हूँ. And I'm doing this, like, of course it's like rock music, like everybody gets fucked up, and even during that, I mean, I have to give credit to my bandmates at the time, like they knew early on that I was trying to, having some degrees of success with therapy and stuff, but so it took a lot. There were a lot. I mean, your original question, I think, was, what was the moment? There were a lot of moments, man. There were a lot of like disappointments, stuff with family. But when I actually stopped, it was kind of like I was at the end of the road. We had done a big tour in Europe, where I had on my own kind of managed to stay sober maybe like a year or so, but not with any real therapy or the way that I did it was a lot of 12-step groups here, AA and NA. And I know that I'm not sure exactly how many of those sorts of communities exist now in Pakistan. I know a few of them. I was fortunate to actually go to one kind of recovery meeting in Karachi a few years ago, which really blew my mind. To actually go and be surrounded by like brown Pakistani men, rather than like my white meetings basically in Boston. And this is another thing I talk about in the show as well. So that was a very long answer to your question.
We love
Yeah.
long answers here. It's just when you say sober, I'm assuming there's alcohol and other drugs because you can't really. Can you get addicted to cannabis? You physically
So
can't,
here's
right?
the thing. Here's the thing. Physically, probably not. And it's not. I'm not. It's not like you're not gonna like die from it. But I think that emotionally, for me, and I have met a lot of people that share this. Like it was enough of a thing where it was like more than a crutch. I personally believe that you can use it problematically, and for me, I think it sort of depends on like why is it that you're doing it and like what effect is it having on your life. So by those two, by those like I think that I did. I don't. I mean, I don't. I think. I mean, most people that I think this. Most people that like do drugs in general like don't get addicted to them. Whether you look at cannabis, whether even if you look at opiates or stuff like that, I think that it's still worth a conversation. Because I definitely feel like I was a pretty problematic user, for sure. So.
So there's this idea that all addiction comes from the same place, whether it's opiates or cannabis. It's probably something in you that you're trying to fill with a drug or two. So it almost
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you're addicted to. It's
So I mean, I
it's
think that yes and no. Like look, I 100% recognize that, like, if you're trying to fight an opiate addiction and you like switch to cannabis, like, great, as far as I'm concerned. For somebody like me, I just couldn't really manage with no matter what I was doing. So whether it was alcohol, whether it was cannabis, whether it was anything else too. I think that I was very fortunate, especially the year that I lived in Pakistan, that I didn't get into opiates, because especially like opium and stuff is pretty real,
यहाँ
readily
भीतर भी होती
available.
है ना
हाँ.
ये भी तो
आप लोगों ने
मसला
तो इन्वेंट ही किया है, तो
है
क्या करें.
यहाँ होती भी तो इतनी अच्छी है ये भी तो एक मसला
हाँ, I know. Yeah, I was a regular at Shah Jamal, man. So kya karo.
Papu Sai died
I know.
yeah
R.I.P. Man. Yeah, that was actually and also my friend Farhad passed away
yeah
this year as well. So I'd done some work with Overload, and so it was a rough year for many different reasons. But
so that's exactly what I was getting at कि कुछ ना कुछ आपके अंदर होल होता है and you're like अच्छा
huh,
अल्कोहल इसको फिल कर दूं ठीक हो जाएगा
huh.
अच्छा कैनabis से फिल कर दूं ठीक
Of course.
except you're not filling what really you need which
Of
in
course, and
most cases is
this is
low.
the central. I think it's the central tenet of most recovery programs. Is like, yeah, the substance is just a symptom of some other underlying something, for sure.
So I know a lot of people who are listening have these ideas, right? कि अभी Bollywood एक actor ने भी suicide कर ली थी, or when Robin
Uh,
Williams happened, people's reaction is, "Oh, why would Robin Williams do it? मतलब उसके पास तो सब कुछ है." People think things
uh,
you get. So you're on tour, you
yeah,
love music, you're in
yeah.
Europe.
Literally
It's
doing
for
my
most people, it's like ये तो he's living the dream. Why
and
would he
to be
be?
perfectly honest with you, coming back from Europe, living my actual childhood dream, playing on stage with Ali Azmat in New
Nice.
York, like
किधर?
the either New York में 2010 में हुआ था, this big Sufi festival, and वहाँ पे
Was it the
that
one at
summer,
Central Park?
huh? Yeah, but
Oh,
what
that's so good. People go look up Sign Live Central Park on YouTube.
huh? And but that weekend, all the whole Pakistani music industry was in New York, and we threw this super punk gig in 24 hours. We put it together. Ali Azmat, Kominas, Aruj, Aftab. We played at this
Grammy
tiny.
nominated Uruj
I
Aftab.
know, Grammy
Grammy
nominated.
nominated
My
Uruj
old
Aftab.
boss. She hired me at FM 89 in Lahore. So I've known Aruj forever. Um,
Nice.
and yeah, and that was the tail end of that tour where I'm literally on stage living my childhood fantasy, and I'm fucked up, and knowing that like it's this shit's gonna get really really bad really soon. So yeah, it's really not about what you have. It's yeah for I think even now with all the language we have to describe it, I think most people probably know somebody that's been touched by addiction or mental health in some way. I think it's still. I was listening to some other podcast recently where the host said it really well. Like, yeah, we talk about these things a little bit more now, but I think it's still in a depersonalized kind of a way, where it's like, oh yeah, but that's not me, that's not me, or it's not really doesn't affect my life or whatever. So,
I think Pakistan mein Bichara is the good position. Otherwise, for most people, the position
uh,
is कि इसकी अपनी गलती है. I
huh,
think that
huh,
criminality that we associate with being an addict,
yeah,
कि वो sympathy का भी नहीं है, ये तो इसका है. And it's almost
uh,
like we're showing kids कि ये देखो सड़क पे हीरोइन चाहिए, ऐसे तुम बन जाओगे. So there's no
huh,
love there. If the
yeah.
person is in that state because of a lack of love, and then there is no love from society as well, how do you ever expect for that person to get better? Or is there any interest of the society to help that person get better at all?
I mean, I think that honestly, for me, it's been through telling these stories, but also, over the last 11 years now, just kind of the amazing things that I have heard of people that have, and it's a fine line between this like American like pull yourself up from the bootstraps bullshit, right? Versus like, yes, people have been able to like lift themselves up in certain ways and have worked hard, but I think that there is like, yeah, there's an element of like you can help somebody along the way. You know what I mean? Like versus just yeah, they just have to fight through it and like there's nothing that like I could do or there's not, but and especially in terms of I think systematic policies and attitudes towards drugs and addiction and it's a whole other conversation of the fact that me as a pretty privileged brown kid in an all white town was able to like drive my car and smoke weed and never get caught by the police, and I never had any interaction with the criminal justice system here. So that's like a whole other conversation, and I've been fortunate to be able to go to meetings in prisons and stuff too, and kind of see it from like a whole other angle. And also there's kind of this conversation happening in the US right now about the like opioid crisis versus the crack epidemic of the 80s where it was completely criminalizing black people, and now because it like was affecting primarily white kids, like the language has changed. So it's an interesting conversation where like yeah, I'm really glad that the language and stuff is changing, but you do have to always look at these things in context, with like, yeah, okay, great, cannabis is legal, but like who are the beneficiaries? Are they going to black-owned businesses and stuff? And you know, so
So I know you've mentioned it a couple of times that things were great at home, or at least better than most, and then in terms of
yeah.
even the financial, they weren't that bad. And uh, that's the Pakistani in you speaking, maybe, because somehow Pakistan, mein, as somebody who's also grappled with mental health issues, I always felt this real guilt.
Hmm.
एंड किसी ने मुझसे मजाक में एक बड़ी अच्छी बात बोली थी कि ये डिप्रेशन
Acha.
तो अमीरों की बीमारी है एंड आई लाफ but it's sort of uh, that guilt also gets to you कि यार I don't
Ah.
have a reason to be depressed and if I still feel this way तो यकीनन मेरे अंदर ही कोई मसला होगा. Did that play for you as well? Because that was a huge factor for me कि you felt guilty for feeling sad.
ओ गिल्ट तो हमारा एक एक और लेवल पे
विरसे
होता
में
है हम
मिला है
लोगों का.
इनहेरिटेंस है साउथ एशियन इनहेरिटेंस में मिल
नहीं वो
गया
तो
है.
and it's not look it's not purely a South Asian thing. I think with that at some point you have to be like, well, look, man, it's my life. Like I'm worth it. Like why shouldn't I also, I don't know, live a meaningful life, and how can I get there? And yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's really great about the recovery community is that they do encourage service. Like, so I'm, for example, just specifically talking about like AA and NA. I've been a sponsor for other guys in recovery, and just like and just going and telling your, like, you go and you can, it's called a commitment type thing where you can go and like tell your story somewhere else. And so making sure that, like, yeah, once you start to get better, you sort of immediately try to give it away to somebody else, and that's kind of that act of service, I think, helps to alleviate, and they kind of say it's not just a recovery saying, but just the idea of, like, as shitty as you feel, or you think you've been like a horrible person your whole life, or you don't deserve anything, like, you just try to do esteemable acts, and then, one by one, you sort of just chip away at whatever the bad things are that you think. So, and I'm oversimplifying this, but sometimes, like, the simple language, I think, is a little bit better.
I'm
So I
I'm
think
sure
there are. Go ahead. Yeah, what were you
I'm
gonna
sure
say?
that big brother idea is symbiotic as well. It also helps you to help somebody else.
100%. I think it helps you more, honestly, to just to be there for somebody else. So I've had the fortune to be able to do that for sure, and then now also to be able to tell this story on a larger level. And I think that my family would also tell you that I'm kind of the person now that uh, sometimes random aunties and uncles who maybe think that maybe their kid like smoked a joint or something, they're like, "Pata nahi kahin se drug dealer ho gaya, usse baat please kar lo." And I'm like, "Look, you can. I will always give out my phone number to them, but I'll be like, if they want to talk to me, by all means, I'll talk to them. But I don't want to just. I don't want them to think that I'm somebody that, like, their mom wants them to talk to or whatever. You know what I mean? Because, like, then they're not going to listen to me. But yeah, I feel like I've had the good fortune to, like, be somebody that's of service now. Because yes, for those same reasons, I just felt kind of worthless for a lot, that I had nothing to offer, for so long.
So, what do you tell a 17-year-old? Because abstinence messaging doesn't work.
Uh-huh. In all honesty, I'm like, so probably, like, do whatever you want, but just talk to me if it becomes a problem, right? Like, that's, yeah, like, what else can you really say? You can't, because, all these programs that, yeah, like you said, like, kids are just going to do the opposite. I did the opposite of everything. So there's no, I know it's kind of, and I'm not a parent, so, like, I know that I'm not a parent and that I have that privilege maybe to have that attitude to just be like, dude, you got to kind of let them figure it out, but you can create sort of a safe environment to, like, not, just make sure that they always have some, or, so when I go to schools and talk about stuff, I did like an interactive theater troupe also for a while, where all the actors were in recovery. We would do these very simple, 45-minute plays, and then have a talk back with the audience afterwards. And kids would always be like, what should I do? Or I have a friend that's going to, just be like, as long as you have one person in your life that you can talk to openly and honestly. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be like your family. As long as you can have someone to just like be honest and straight up with, I think that you'll be in good shape.
You
Because
said I'm not.
the hiding, sorry, yeah, just hiding stuff is where I think you run into problems.
So you said I'm not a parent, but that's exactly what parents should tell their children. Yes,
Right?
somehow we assume it'll be harder for them to say it, but at some
Uh,
point, all the children want to hear is whatever happens, go and swing because we'll be your safety net. It's when you
uh,
feel that you don't have that safety net, either you're not going to swing, go on the trapeze at all, and live your life
yeah,
in fear, or just
yeah,
do it anyway and fall because you feel
yeah,
like that
yeah,
doesn't exist for you.
yeah.
It's a friend of the podcast, Sajid Sheikh,
Oh,
uh,
hello.
and there are a bunch of people in the comments, but since Sajid
Acha.
is a friend of the podcast, she has a
मैं
comment which
read
says,
नहीं कर रहा comments, so thank you
नहीं, नहीं,
for doing
मैं-
it.
healing
Acha.
and addressing mental health issues also comes with privilege.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, access to therapy and stuff. Yeah. I mean, what can I say? That's absolutely true.
मैं पर्सनल एक सवाल पूछता हूँ अपने लिए शाहजहां,
हाँ हाँ हाँ.
ये फीलिंग जो है, ये जो वॉइस इन योर हेड है, जो मुझे भी रोज उठाती है कि यू आर शिटी एंड यू विल नेवर अमाउंट टू एनीथिंग नो मैटर व्हाट
हाँ.
हैपेंस, ये
Yeah.
डज इट गो अवे?
Yeah, I don't think it goes away. I think that you just become better equipped to deal with it, and you understand that it's just a part of who you are, and that it's really a daily battle with it, and you just have to. Yeah, I mean, I still have to remind myself to do whatever, and I think I saw some other post. I don't know if it was Sajirs or somebody that was like, people that maybe have take 5 minutes to an hour to meditate or something in the morning, like that in itself is a privilege. We don't all get that. But there's, yeah, I think for me, like, I got to find some way to give myself a break, you know?
It's that I think maybe sometimes the escapism you're looking for is
Uh,
from your own mind.
oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, being like a creative person, I mean, yeah, I'm always, yeah, whether it's music or acting or whatever. Or even, I think for me, definitely like, as a former Jersey weed smoker, cigarette smoker, like the fact that I'm so into physical fitness and stuff now is kind of remarkable. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's looking back on, so my anniversary is actually January 5th, so I'm about to come up on 11 years. And it's kind of wild to just think about how much has changed. But yeah, the voice doesn't go away. Honestly, I think sometimes it actually gets, in some ways, it gets a little bit harder with time once you sort of sort out the immediate messes. Sometimes the lingering, because ultimately, like, that is sort of a part of you too. And I think for me, I've tried my best to come to peace with, like, well, I'm also capable of like really high highs, and in order for me to feel those, I just have to feel like shit sometimes. And it's gotten better, and it's not, I haven't had like a super depressive episode in a while, but I, even last year, obviously, like, we were all going through lots of stuff in 2020, but I realized that I was super unhappy doing what I was doing, and I made some like professionally, and was able to make some changes, and so yeah.
ये मेरा भी, because I think I also have a propensity for it
Acha.
biologically, and things that I work with my therapist, यही है कि डर लगता है कि if you miss out on the high highs and the lower lows,
Huh.
you're going to miss out on the creative process, because वो higher highs पे जो चीजें
Huh.
आती हैं, वो normal, if you level out, yeah, maybe you'll have a
तुम्हें
better
क्या
life.
लगता है कि ये this is a conversation I have a lot with creative people, whatever that means, is que, do you think that that balance is something that is for us? Because kind of like you're saying, like, I don't mean mania in the bipolar sense, but in terms of like knowing and getting that feeling of like, oh, today's a day where I'm just firing on all cylinders. I feel like if I don't like get everything out, when I might maybe I won't be this like motivated the next day. Does that kind of stuff happen to you?
So that I can still manage. If I wake up early enough, get my coffee, get my workout in, I'll
Yeah.
feel like I'll be able to accomplish everything by noon. But I also have manic episodes. So I have
Acha.
depressive episodes, but I also have manic
Acha.
episodes where I'll write a film script in a night. Just
Yeah.
like 24 hours in front of the laptop, not go to sleep, have 6 books
Yeah.
open on the floor,
Yeah.
have a drawing on the. It sounds crazier. I'm making it sound a lot crazier than it is, but it's sort of like that.
मेरे तो
And
right in front of me मेरे कोई 3 guitar पड़े हुए हैं. There's like wires hanging out from all of
yeah.
them, and I don't want to clean it because I know that if I put it away, when I want to go do something, I won't do it. So yeah.
So, yes, I have weeks where I'm waking up at a certain time, I'm getting my stuff done at a certain time, I'm sleeping at a certain time. But उन
Yeah.
दिनों में वो मैजिक नहीं आता
हाँ.
जो जो
नहीं, मेरी
जो
पता
मैजिक
है मुझे
एपिसोड में आता
एक मेरी जो one thing I do, I think कि routine थोड़ी देर के लिए it's actually really good for someone like me. So definitely, yeah, yeah. So yeah, yes and no, I guess is what I'm
I
saying.
mean, I think routine is great for everybody.
Yeah.
And personally, I think I feel the best with a routine. If I wake up early, get my stuff done, sleep early.
Yeah.
लेकिन magic nahi hai. Sometimes you also crave that. So for instance, I do stand-up comedy. If you're on
Acha.
stage and there are 200 people listening to you and going
Yeah.
crazy, and then you come home and
हाँ.
you're
अब क्या
alone
करना
with
है?
your thoughts, वो
Yeah.
उस high से low ही आएगा ना. I mean, you
हाँ.
can never sustain that high where you have 500 people hanging on to every word you say. उसके बाद low ही आना है और हो क्या सकता है?
हाँ. हाँ. Yeah. I think that.
So
Yeah.
do
I
you feel
think
like
that. Go ahead. क्या कहने लगा?
were you also chasing the high?
Yeah, I mean that to me that high, I'm still chasing it, for sure. Like one thing I realized after the last 2 years playing my first couple of concerts, I do play with Kominas. I play with another band called Ravi Shavi from Providence as well. We did probably 5 or 6 gigs this summer. I think we're supposed to play on New Year's Eve. Abhi pata nahi kya ho raha hai. I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but yeah, man. I mean, it's a great natural high. Like I don't, there's, for me, and that's, we started the conversation off with identity. One thing that like always centered me in myself is playing music live, and that would always bring me right back to kind of who I always felt like I was meant to be. So, and for that, I didn't need to be. It was actually worse the times I did it fucked up because then I was in my head. And for that kind of thing, like, and I'm also like I play punk music usually, so I'm usually jumping around, very sweaty. It's a very like visceral kind of experience. So, so yeah, I think I don't know. It's weird as someone in recovery to say like, I guess it's okay to chase one high, maybe not another high. I don't know. I think it's, if of all the things to like be addicted to, I think now that I know how to manage that one better, so I don't have to like, so that the downtime doesn't, so that now I could, if when the show is over, for example, I can be like, all right, I know that for the rest of today, or maybe for tomorrow, nothing is maybe going to feel as good as what happened last night, but maybe there's other positive things I can do. Maybe I can call someone and just talk to them about it. Maybe I can go to lunch with someone, or maybe I can, do something else. So I think that I have better coping mechanisms in place now to deal with that stuff.
I think everybody who listens to the podcast knows exactly what question I'm going to ask next.
Okay.
If you are a fan of the podcast, this is your test. If you know मैं क्या सवाल पूछने वाला हूँ, and जो लोग regularly सुनते हैं वो चिल्ला रहे हैं ये सवाल. Did you try psychedelics?
Hanji, let's see. That's one thing that I am not 100% sure that I won't do again. I think it was Roger Waters or something from Pink Floyd who said that, if I like, because he stopped doing drugs a little while ago, and he was like, if I make it to the age of like 75, I'm gonna fucking do acid or like whatever. So I did mushrooms when I was in college. I had a horrible experience because I was extremely suicidal already before that, and I wasn't ready, and I didn't do it. I don't think it was done in like a guided kind of a way, you know. So I had a pretty awful experience with them. Um, I also recently had a conversation with a really good friend of mine. He's kind of like a somewhat of a journalist type person who writes a lot about drugs and stuff. And I kind of straight out asked him, like, do you think, like, now that I've been sober for 10 or 11 years, is this something that like I should do? Or basically, he was somebody that I would have expected would have told me, like, yeah, man, you should totally do them. I'll get you them right now. Let's make this happen tonight. Like, we'll go to. I was out in on the West Coast,
Sounds like
and
me.
what he said really surprised me. He was like, "Look, man, I'm not going to tell you yes, a hard yes or a hard no. One thing I will say is that you appear to be somebody that has come to a lot of realizations about yourself without any of that stuff. Also, it's not like you do so." Western culture, capitalism, has this way of broifying everything, right? And now it's become psychedelics. So, like, it's not like you sort of and like one thing that's happening a lot in the US is, yeah, everybody's talking about acid, about DMT, about all these things, and like everybody's people are maybe going on these retreats and stuff now and doing them and just like trying to really just like get the experience. Like everybody's trying to do it and commodify it and stuff. And he's like, it's not like, and you can obviously, since you probably know better than I do, it's not like you do it once and then you're good. Like, yes, you can probably always access that part of you and you'll remember whatever kind of like happened. And so basically, I'm not sure. I feel like if I were to do them again, I would still want to wait, and because it's not. I don't think it's the same conversation as addiction. For me, I think that we're still there's a lot of studies coming up because now I think it's Johns Hopkins that's doing the
Yeah.
first research and stuff, and there's all these books that have come out recently. Yeah, I mean, there's cultures that have been using this stuff for forever. So maybe there is some value in it. I'm not like I don't. I'm still curious about. I feel like I'm still growing every day as a person, kind of like without
Mm.
that stuff. And again, I don't really look down on like I have most of my friends have done them and have had really like great experiences. I also have friends that have done them way too much. So, I don't know. Kind of a
जी.
complicated answer to your question.
हाँ, आई मीन जरूरी थोड़ी है करना सबके लिए,
Ah,
सबके अपने अपने उसमें होते हैं.
yeah,
I also think thinking of them as miracle drugs is probably the wrong way to go about it. What you
yeah,
said about them, uh, of you having nothing to fix, that they don't fix anything as
right.
such, so they're not fixers.
Ah,
Yes, they have helped a lot of people in addiction because sometimes they make you question your own patterns. Oh,
yes,
why do I do this? Why do I do this
exactly.
the same way every single day? And a lot of times, uh, it's like driving. If I'm driving back home, I'm not consciously following the road. I know the streets that I will take. Even if I zone out, think about tomorrow, I will follow the same road back home. We don't realize we do the same things with our thoughts as well. We follow the same patterns. We'll think about things the same way. It could be something as simple as मेरे एक पुराने रूममेट थे कॉलेज में, and we had
Acha.
a falling out, and I always had this negative feeling about the falling out, and I always hated him. And then once on psychedelic, I had a realization about him, and I was like, oh, how could I not have seen that this is what he was
Mm,
struggling with, which is why he was acting this way? And it was right in front of me, and it made complete sense to me on
mm-hmm.
psychedelics. So that hate I had for him sort of left. Even if it's
Yeah.
not true, even if the conclusion I came to is not some universal truth that I stumbled upon on a psychedelic trip, it really
Yeah.
helped me. It healed me. It healed
Yeah.
my memory and my relationship with him. And
For
that
sure.
didn't fix me, but it's one less bag I take
Yeah.
into the next day.
No, that sounds, and but मैंने I think सुना है कि DMT का ये एक self destruction out there temporarily, that, and but I mean, for me initially when I heard it I was like, oh man, that sounds fucking terrifying. I don't know if I can handle that. But honestly, one thing that I did in my first few years of recovery was a lot of very focused writing exercises. So one of the things that happens is you do this thing called a fourth step, which is, they call it sort of a moral inventory or something, where you essentially, it's much more complicated than what I'm saying, but you literally list out every person or you've ever had any kind of resentment against, and you, in a very detailed, the way that I did it was like, because I'm a super nerd, Excel sheet, columns of like, acha, iske saath I feel this thing, you starting with yourself, but I feel this thing to this person. Why do I feel it? What did I do to contribute to this? And then you basically go, and I had made it though because of my travels and stuff. I must have had 200-300 fucking people on there or whatever. And at the end of it, you spend a day or two just reading all this stuff out loud to your sponsor. And eventually with the goal of whittling the list down to the people you feel you owe some kind of amends to. So you actually set up a time to sit with the person and it's more for them than for you, but it's also kind of for yourself, where you essentially are like, look, this is what I feel I did. This is how I could have been better. I'm different now. Is there anything else I can do to mend this relationship? If you never want to see me again, that's totally cool. So doing these acts, I think, a little bit slowly and more over time, I sort of had a similar, I think, to what you're saying, like letting go of the baggage. And it's not that it disappears. It's not that the stuff doesn't come up again sometimes, but like something about like doing it in that way adds this sort of finality to it, that it's like, okay, no, now I've put this out there. I really have to like be different now. Does it, I hope it makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, it
here.
does.
Yeah.
So while you're doing all of this, while you're struggling with all of this, you're touring as well, you're composing, you're writing music. So this idea that we've created, that even Sajid is talking about, the sad artist, or this romanticization of sorrow, कि यार हाँ ये इतना सैड था तो ये शायरी निकली है. लाइक मैं दुआएं देता हूँ उस लड़की को जिसने अरिजीत सिंह का दिल तोड़ा है. क्या जन्नती औरत है. Because you listen to Arijit Singh and you're like, हाँ इसका सही कट है.
अच्छा, मैं, I will say कि I don't write lyrics, तो मेरा gham is all in the melodies. So when I was getting sober, I left music for probably close to 2 years. I didn't go to any concerts. I didn't really play that much. That's not true. I did play music with some guys that I met in recovery. It was a kind of like a more of a fun kind of a band. But yeah, so I don't know if I necessarily would fall into the personally like the sad artist category, but I definitely like made music with a lot of sad artists. So I get it.
You probably used your teenage angst if you were making punk music.
I hope to always use my teenage angst, man. I hope that never goes anywhere.
हाँ वो कभी जाती नहीं है. मैं recently
जानी नहीं चाहिए, because if you let it go, then you just fucking, I don't know, become boring. So
अभी recently मेरी गाड़ी में Linkin Park चल रहा था, and then I was like,
Linkin Park. Well, I saw Linkin Park in high school. Oh man.
I was like, मैं 13 साल का क्या चूतिया आदमी था. तब तो ये lyrics मुझे समझ में भी नहीं आते थे. अब मैं क्या MSN के स्टेटस रख रहा था.
यही हो रहा है कि मैं
अब
पीछे जाके अब सारे 90s के जो हैं, I'm re-listening to all of them, and I don't care what anybody says. Fucking Korn, Incubus, all Slipknot, Sada. It's great stuff. System of a Down, all these bands, man. Because yeah, they're dealing with real shit.
Incubus has fallen off into the cracks a little. इतना उनको recognition नहीं मिलती जितना वो phenomenal band थे.
यार मेरा हाई स्कूल में कवर बैंड, मेरा हाई स्कूल बैंड में कवर बैंड ही था. तो हम सिर्फ Weezer, Incubus, and Tool. We just played their music. You know, we had a few originals, but none of them were as good as our covers. You know.
I would have assumed you guys played a lot of Green Day.
Green Day, no, we didn't play any Green Day actually. मैं खुद बजाता हूँ. Even I'm about to turn 40, but I rock out to fucking Green Day in in my house. I don't care. So
हाँ, लोगों के बड़े स्प्लिट ओपिनियंस होते हैं ऑन ग्रीन डे.
yeah, Green Day is amazing. I don't care what anybody like. Well, I have not followed them beyond unki American Idiot album. So I think up until that point, but they're just undeniably the guy. He still uses the same Fender Strat, man. Like how punk is that? That's still one of his main guitars. Is that blue Fernandez Stratocaster? So,
I think American Idiot ही मसला था, because ये जो punk
huh?
fans है ना, they're like, oh, they've sold out. They're not. They've
It's
stopped
I
now.
just listened to that record coming home, and I'm a fan since Kerplunk. You know what I mean? Like way back. So I think that artists have to evolve, and sometimes they make stuff which because I mean you can't just put out the same thing over and over again. And yeah, and I there's actually this great new podcast called Bandsplain on Spotify, where they do kind of what we're doing. They talk and then they actually play full songs by artists too, and they just kind of go through a career and yeah, I mean, of course, like if an artist's gets they do their first album and it sounds one way, and then yeah, surprise, they like get a bunch of great equipment and they want to like record stuff in a different way. I don't know. I'm pretty pro.
You're pretty
I'm
what? Sorry.
pro the evolving of artists. So I'm not, and coming from somebody who used to be very no, I only listen to I only listen to Janoon, Jimi Hendrix, and Pink Floyd. That's kind of how I grew up. So
I mean, it's great music to grow up on. और क्या चाहिए इंसान को?
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah.
where Roger Waters is also coming from, कि उसको
Uh-huh.
शायद सिड बैरेट की वजह से he's
Uh-huh.
like, नहीं, drugs नहीं करने भाई.
Shai.
मैंने दूर
Yeah.
रहना इन
Yeah.
चीजों से.
We'll be. That's what an amazing story. You know, the whole Shine On You Crazy Diamond story.
Yeah, and what a song.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, let's come to your podcast.
Sure.
Just आप Shahjahan Mughal. I'm not
Hanji.
sure if American audience will
Aptly named
understand.
by my parents. Yeah, they had the
हाँ
audacity.
क्या? But I contend my dad has a bigger ego than you, because my name is Shehzad. He
Huh.
named you Shahjahan, hopefully कि चलो ये जाके king of the world बनेगा.
Huh.
My name is Shehzad, which is like Prince. He is still stroking his own ego while naming me, because like ये तो Prince है, king तो मैं ही हूँ ना.
Huh. No, yeah, the show is called King of the World. You can get it on all the podcast platforms. It's a really I can't believe it's actually done. We spent this whole year, our company Rafaelion Media. It's a 7-part narrative series like about my life in the over the last 20 years in the context of coming of age post 9/11. So it sort of sequentially goes over the last 20 years side by side with kind of what was happening in my life. And my parents are on there, my sisters, my friends, along with different, historical experts. We have a therapist, some actors and comedians. I think it's a very, I don't want to say like unique, but it is, from what I've been told, and the response that we've gotten to it is it's a very different way to sort of tell the story of being a Desi American kid, a Muslim American kid, a Pakistani American kid during over the last 20 years. And it's really been a privilege. So I've never done anything like this. I'm not really, I'd never written anything really. So it was really quite a undertaking, and I'm really just kind of proud. I couldn't be prouder of how it turned out. हमने कहा था कि यार अगर हम if we just do one decent episode that people listen to, we will have done our job. But I really think, and it's very heavily stylized, and the sound, we have great sound designers and stuff that worked on it to really like to really take advantage of the audio storytelling medium. So I guess that's what the show is about.
It's mainly, I think a lot more of these stories need to be told, because the idea of the Muslim American is still quite insular, if not
Uh-huh.
singular, in the US. You don't get multiple perspectives on it, to see a story like yours represented, it might just open a lot of eyes to, oh, ये पंख भी बजाता है, ये मुसलमान भी है, ये मस्जिद भी जाता था, ये कैसे एग्जिस्ट
Uh-huh.
करता है एलियन यहाँ पर.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I think that the landscape of this kind of stuff, I think in the US at least, has definitely been changing over the last 5 to 10 years. It's interesting to, and I talk about all this in the show, sort of with Kominas to, kind of being in that first post 9/11 wave of, being in the media, being in the public eye, and kind of what that was like. And like you and I were talking about before, like being covered in the media, whereas where things are now. But yeah, and I just, again, I really wasn't expecting, like, I think we made it with a particular community in mind, what in terms of who our listeners might be. But I realized pretty much from, we released the first episode on September 1st, the final one, like at the end of October. From the get-go, it was actually Fatma that she listened to it, and she was like, I could relate to so much. And it's not that I didn't think it would relate to the, I guess, English-speaking audience in Pakistan. Unfortunately, we don't have an Urdu version of it yet, but I didn't realize that there were different elements, because I'm tackling all those things, right? I'm not just talking about politics. I'm also talking about identity and mental health and addiction, but also, like, yeah, just insecurity and belonging and all these different elements. And also, just the fact that I think my people's favorite characters are like my mom and my sisters, that are sort of recurring. My family are recurring voices in the series. So it's just a really amazing kind of. I'd always wanted to do some. I think we all have many of us, I shouldn't say we all, have a desire to kind of leave some kind of legacy, whatever it might be. I always wanted to tell my story. I didn't necessarily always feel confident that I could, or that anybody would, not that anybody would care, but that it was like, why would it be, especially with the 9/11 thing, I knew it was going to be like the 20th anniversary, so we're just going to be bombarded with all this stuff anyway. Like, what is it that's going to be so, more interesting or whatever about this? But I'm really, really proud of how it turned out.
So what you're saying is, I want to heal, I want to feel like I'm close to something real. Somewhere I wanted all along. Somewhere I belong. किसी शायर से बड़ा खूब कहा है. Somewhere I belong. Yes, we were bombarded with 9/11, and Mo's made this great. He's produced a great documentary, Turning Point, on Netflix.
Yes.
Phenomenal. But फिर भी हमें इतना Muslim perspective नहीं मिलता, despite all the documents coming out of the surveillance of all the cases. I don't think we've seen enough stories about it. I don't think there's a single fictional piece of drama that's been made on it.
So there is one show. So like the show Rami dealt with it. I haven't seen
Rami, but I've heard it's very good.
Dekhni chahiye. It's really, really good. I think there is an episode, because I think he's 10 years younger than me, so just kind of, so they're coming out slowly, is my point. So I think that it's clear that, we need to tell these kinds of stories, and we need to be the ones that tell them instead of having them told for us, because, shaping the narrative. I think that sounds better than controlling the narrative. But yeah.
Or at least, like, हमारी कहानियां हम ही बता दें, मतलब आप लोग बताए जा रहे हैं, आप लोगों ने डिफाइन किया,
हमारी भी साथ
हमारी भी सुन लो.
Exactly.
Hassan Minhaj and Kalpen had a great conversation on
Hassan Minhaj ka, I just saw his new show live. He was here in Boston. Phenomenal. King's Jester. King mujhe yaad hona chahiye, but
Shahjehan Jester.
I know.
You should have been like,
it was great, and he told a kind of, I don't want to give his act away or anything, but I saw him the first time when he came a few years back, but this show really, really blew me away.
So now, I mean, Riz is doing a phenomenal job as well.
Yeah.
So ये कहानियां बतानी बहुत जरूरी हो गई हैं.
Absolutely.
So thanks, Shahjahan. आप आए, अपने हमें कहानी बताएं. I know you have to.
Yeah, thank you, Shehzad.
Meeting as well.
Nay, actually, my other meeting got cancelled, so I'm full.
तो अब बताएं, Shahjahan, आपने क्या बातें करनी? अब तो time. आपको पता
Nay,
है
thank
आपके
you.
हम नाम ने ताजमहल बनाया था?
Say that again.
Did शाहजहां make ताजमहल?
Yeah, he did. Absolutely.
So
Well, technically, his laborers made
yeah,
it,
he hired.
right? He didn't actually do it.
But even
So,
the story is quite fucked up. So the idea is कि eternal love उसने मुमताज के लिए
huh.
ताजमहल बनाया है. Do you know how many children he had with Mumtaz?
Actually, I don't.
14. 14 in 14 years. It's like वो हर जंग के बाद आता था and be like मुमताज कहाँ पर है? मतलब it's not like he didn't have more wives. 14 और 14 में से 7 died. So
Oh, wow.
it's not just
Yeah.
Taj Mahal. It's also जो हुआ है Mumtaz. Guess how Mumtaz died?
I actually don't know this as well.
During childbirth, of course. What
Oh
else?
my God.
जो शाहजहां उसके साथ कर रहा था बेचारी.
Oh God.
इसके बाद ताजमहल तो बनाना जरूरी था इतना जुल्म करने के बाद. And
Oh my God.
that's sold to
Yeah.
us as eternal love.
Is it one before we go? Is that story true? Of there was supposed to be a matching one on the other side that was supposed to be black?
Huh. It's
Acha.
like the DC verse. Athar Ahmed also joined us, who's a huge fan of the Kominas. So
Acha, hi Athar.
you should meet him actually. He's a
Yeah, I was
he's a
hoping
fun
to come to
musician in
Pakistan.
the US.
Acha, where does well we can message separately, but I was hoping to make a trip to Pakistan right now actually, but clearly that didn't happen. So I'm hoping to maybe come in March or April or something, but maybe link. So you're in आप कराची में होते हैं कि लाहौर?
मैं कराची में हूँ. I think you come to
Karachi,
Lahore, right? When you come here.
But I have started to come to Karachi too. So I just didn't go because I didn't really have family, like immediate family there. But on these last, so I was there January of 2020. It was actually the first. We were there for a cousin's shadi, but it was the first time my both of my parents and both of my sisters and my now wife. It was her first trip to Pakistan, and so it was right before the lockdown.
So when you came initially in the 2000s and you had a chance to meet certain elites of the country, weren't you like ये लोग इतने चूतिए क्यों हैं?
Yeah, nee, I've been coming since I was born. So it's the two side by side that stuff that's just I've been very used to coming to Pakistan. But I will say that it wasn't until I lived there on my own that I felt like I really understood more of Pakistan and that I realized that I was able to build, even though it was a rough time for me personally, I was able to like build a relationship with the country that was outside of family stuff. So now when I come, I have like other shit to do. I have like other people to see, and I'm pretty close with a lot of people that are in music in Pakistan, and you know, so I feel very lucky to have that. You know, I know where to get good baturas and parathas and stuff, and
I thought
so yeah.
I was like maybe other things, but then I realized कि नहीं आपको
Well, I'm sure I could probably still find those, but yeah, I'm not trying to. Not now.
इससे पहले कि पुलिस मुझे आके अरेस्ट मैंने तो सारी बातें खुल के कर ली हैं. But thanks Shahjahan, it's a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to your audience. I hope this was worth your time.
Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you Shahjahan for coming. Everybody go check out King of the World on Spotify and everywhere you get podcasts. ये चीज ना ये निकाल के next ad में
yes ये sample कर लेंगे in the next song I put out. So yeah.